Hi, I'm Ztarli, and in this video I'll be drawing a sleeping dragon. Just a reminder, this is a time-lapse video, so it does contain fast-moving and flashing images. So I'll be using Artflow to draw this picture, and I am trying to be better at art. I know that sounds a bit weird, but sometimes I just need to sort of concentrate on things and actually want to draw a better picture to make it look like a better thing, I guess. So I decided I wanted to think more about like a completed image instead of just drawing a head or just drawing a dragon and then thinking about the background afterwards. I had a complete scene in my mind for this one that I wanted to try and convey. So I was reasonably happy with how the sketch was going, but later in the video you'll see that I make some adjustments using the select tool to sort of skew the shape of the head a little bit, as it ended up looking a bit flatter than I originally wanted. Now I do have a very solid color feel. For this picture, I wanted it to look like it was resting under tropical leaves, so I wanted a very green glow to it. So I start with putting a gradient in the background to remind myself that's the sort of color palette I'm going for. I then decide to color the dragon itself, but this is far from the color it's going to end up. This is just what the dragon would look like if it didn't have any kind of colors or light or dark shades going across it. So in a completely neutral colored environment, this is the colors the dragon would be. Now this is just a random dragon, it's not based on anything. Usually when I decide to draw like a scene or I have an idea in mind, it tends to just be a random character dragon, as I do very much enjoy creating or playing with new concepts and new ideas. So that's why often you'll see that I've created drawings or finished artworks with random dragons rather than existing ones, because I enjoy figuring out like new shapes and putting to paper, I guess, ideas I've had in my head that I've been thinking about, you know, just as I'm walking around or doing other work. I sometimes have ideas come into my head, and the best way to sort of get them out is just to put pen to paper, so to speak. Now we'll be shading this mostly with yellows and greens, as that's the kind of light that's being cast onto the dragon, as the light is coming through foliage, which mostly is out of your view, but I still want that feeling to be there, that the light is filtering through green plants. It's not just coming straight down on the dragon. I do move on to the painting stage rather quickly. Basically, as soon as I have the so-called flat colors down, I immediately started mixing in different shadows and lights and combining the layers together. So for the majority of this, it's all painted on the one layer for the dragon character, and I'm just sort of like going for it and mixing colors in here and there. I do feel like the mixing went a bit overboard and I lost some of the color or the original character color and patterns that it had, but I think the overall picture ended up looking pretty good. It did take me about 3 hours to do this picture from beginning to end. During the process of drawing this, I did do it in 2 sittings, so 2 1.5 hour sittings, and the first part of the picture I was feeling pretty good about. But then I got halfway through the first sitting and I started to feel pretty crummy about it. I was trying really hard to make a good picture and I just felt like it just didn't look good. I thought the colors looked gross and muddy and I didn't think I'd defined the shape very well. And I was actually just feeling pretty down about the picture overall. As I was trying to do a picture better than my normal stuff, I wanted to have better artwork. I want to have better sort of pictures that sort of maybe even tell a story, and I was trying to achieve that, and I felt like I just wasn't getting anywhere with the picture. So I did feel pretty down about it on the first sitting, which is why I stopped during that sitting after an hour and a half. I was like, I'm just going to stop doing it for now and return to it on another day with a fresh mind and see if I can sort of, find my errors and fix it and make it a better picture. And sometimes that's an important thing to do if you're finding that you're just stressing out about something and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere on it. Maybe just take a break, take a walk, and then return to it with fresh eyes, and hopefully you'll be able to identify what was wrong, or perhaps even see that there wasn't anything that wrong with it in the first place, and continue on with the picture and have a finished art piece by the end of it. Now I have started to add the scales, and I didn't like them. You see, I undid them just then. Another thing I've sort of been feeling lately is that my scales could be a lot better than what they were. In the beginning, I felt like my scales were really cool and easy to do, and I really liked them. And then I started trying to make them look better, and then somehow I ended up in this place where they just kind of looked lazy and unthought about. Like I just randomly placed scales places and not really thought about the shape or if they really belonged there or not. So I was trying to think more about my scale placement and what kind of scales would go where. But again, at this point in the drawing, I just felt like it wasn't looking good. I felt like even though I'd been using reference and trying to think about the scale placement, it still looked like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was just randomly placing scales places. So again, it was really important for me to take a break and come back. When I came back, I did feel a lot better about the picture, and so I sort of just thought about the placement of the scales a bit more, and I do like how the scales look at the end of it. I do still feel like this picture could have been better, and I know some people will be like, oh no, it's a really good picture, but in my mind I feel like I could have done better. And that's just kind of a bit of an artist's curse, is that quite often when you draw a picture, even if it's a really good picture and other people really like it, you can still see the flaws that you created and you wish you could draw better. And that's just part of being an artist, and it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing because it makes you strive to be better. And if you don't have that strive to improve, and you don't revisit things and look at things to try and improve, then you're just going to be stagnant, and then eventually, you're just not going to be any better than what you were in the first place. So it is important to have that feeling, but sometimes it does make you feel a bit down, a bit discouraged. Just remember that it's just one picture, and maybe the next one will be better, but it can't be better if you don't keep trying. So this is the second sitting, and straight away I noticed the eye was just way too big. So I readjust the eye and color back in around the socket, and I do think that makes a pretty big difference. I do have a problem with drawing my eyes too big, so quite often I'll find myself resizing them, especially in like the Day of Dragons comic, because the characters, I actually have a character sheet that I refer to, but I find myself slipping into a cartoony style sometimes, and then I'll sit back and look at the picture and I'll be like, why does this look wrong? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's why, because the eye is enormous. And then I have to resize it. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it's a good idea to have large eyes, especially if you are going for quite a cartoony style and you want to be able to have like quite vivid expressions. Larger eyes and defined eyebrows are important, but if you're going for a more realistic style, then the eyes generally, at least in my case, need to be smaller than I think, and quite often resizing the eye does make the whole thing look a bit more realistic once I've done so. So I did feel a bit better about this picture once I returned to it, but I am regretting my decision to decide to draw every single scale on this dragon, because even though it's just a head and like 2 hands, it does still take a lot of time to draw all these scales, as they're not just like a circle, they are a shaded circle. Nearly every single one of them has some form of shading. If not on the scale itself, I often shade in between the scales, sometimes with a lighter color to sort of highlight the shape of the scale. I do sort of try to blend the scales out a bit as it goes further away, as they become less easy to see, but it does still take the majority of this picture to do all the scales. For the 3 hours I spent, most of it was just painting these scales and trying to make them look realistic-ish. And I'm just, at this stage, I'm just avoiding those feet. I really didn't have the energy to do the feet, and I knew when I start putting scales on feet, I often discover that there are flaws with them, and I just didn't have the energy for it. So I pretty much put scales on every single other part of this dragon until finally I'm like, well, there's only one bit left, so I guess it's time for dragon feet. I am still trying to think of this picture as a whole picture, so you do see me sort of zoom out and dull down some of the scales, as I do think they are too obvious or too in focus, and redoing some of these scales around the edge as they weren't quite right. I then struggle with the eye again. There's just something about it I didn't like. I still think there's something not quite right about the eye. But you do see, like, I'm like, oh, should I give it lashes? Like, no, that doesn't look right. Maybe just like one solid lash. Maybe I need to make the definition between the 2 lids different. But I just end up not happy with it, to be honest. It's an eye, I guess, but I don't know. I think I need to return to basics in some places, which I am trying to do a lot more. In my more recent artworks I've been looking at muscle structure a lot more to try and make sure that the forms I'm drawing are more consistent with the muscle structure of real animals, like big cats and stuff. I would really like to have a model of a big cat with muscle structure, but I thought maybe I could find some online and download them, but I couldn't, and then 3D print them because I have a 3D printer. But I couldn't really find anything. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to make muscle structures of animals that you can download and print. There is a really cool artist that does it, but they don't sell the files to print yourself. You have to buy them from them, and being in Australia, it was going to cost me $400 for one model, and I just don't really have that spare money at the moment, so I ended up just looking at photos of the models to try and get better muscle structure down. But it is definitely something I'm going to be doing more in the future to try and make my models look more 3-dimensional. I finally decided to get the select tool out and skew this and make the head less flat. Now, I don't recommend doing this late in the piece because you'll notice it made everything blurry. So now all my detailed scale work is actually slightly less in focus. It's all slightly blurred. It didn't make that big of a difference, but if you're going to make massive anatomy changes like that, it is a much better idea to do that earlier in the art piece. I don't know why it took me so long to decide to do that. I think it was just because I was unhappy the whole way through, and then I was finally like, well, maybe it's the head shape, and I changed it and I thought it looks better, so I stuck with it. It just means that I will have to return to some points on the picture to redefine them. If I want them to be the focus of the picture, they will have to be repainted over. I finally did the feet, and I'm going to be honest, I was super lazy. I was just like, you know what? This is good enough. They're not going to be in focus. I want the head to be the focus of the picture. So I basically just do the bare minimum I think is acceptable, and then I move on to doing the background. For the background, I wanted it to be sleeping on a sort of soft mossy bed, but I also still wanted it to be obvious that it was under a canopy of leaves. So I started off just doing this fairly lazy mossy background. I just used my texture brush, which makes a pretty good moss bed. And then I draw a super lazy plant in the background with a light coming through it. As I mentioned, I wasn't very happy with this picture, so by this time I was just like, I'm just gonna finish it. I don't want to leave it unfinished. I want it to be a finished picture. So I was just sort of going through the motions of getting a background that would fit the character. I'd sort of lost my idea of making this a really good picture, as in my mind I decided it wasn't a very good picture, and I thought I'd failed at my mission of trying to do better art than I normally do. When I looked back on this after it was finished, I decided I actually did do a pretty good job, and it wasn't as bad as I originally thought. But whilst I was drawing it, I did feel pretty down about this picture overall. I almost forgot to do the tail, and then I remembered at the last minute that there was supposed to be a tail in this picture, and I do think it does add something to it. It sort of like balances the picture more. But again, I didn't spend much time on the tail as I was kind of burnt out at this stage, and I knew it wasn't going to be in focus. So I just do a quick couple of scales on it, and that's good enough. I then moved on to adding a deep color shadow, as again it's supposed to be under the light of the leaves. So I put this very heavy shadow over the top, which is just a green shadow, as you can see, and then I'm erasing away parts that the leaf shadows wouldn't be cast across, and making brighter spots in the picture. I did intend to push my light and dark areas quite significantly in this picture. That was the idea I was going for. It sort of just ended up looking a bit green, but I do think the picture looks like it's under leaf cover, so I think I got the idea across, but I still think I could have done a better job of my light and dark colors for this picture. I then do a color adjust that kind of undoes half the green I did in the picture, but I do think it looks better anyway. I do a blurred layer and erase away where I want the focus to be, and then this is pretty much done. And yeah, I think it looks okay. I think it looks cute, and it's a okay picture, but hopefully in the future I'll be doing more sort of ideas like this, and I do hope to improve more and share more of my fully finished pictures with everyone. Well, thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support me. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!